Good evening, you're watching TKC Daily. We make sense of the global events with straight facts and sharp analysis. I know you have seen the thumbnail and you are probably thinking, when will this guy stop talking about Trump's tariffs? But what can I do? Go and tell President Donald Trump. And I promise you from tomorrow, no more stories on tariffs, unless, of course, President Donald Trump does something special for us again. Putting jokes aside, we have got a power-packed episodes for you today. Here's what's coming up on the show. First, we break down the impact of Trump's new tariffs, why they are not just bad for China or any one country, but a disaster for the entire global economy. Then we look at how world leaders are reacting. Is anyone pushing back, or are they just accepting the new reality? Next, Trump's latest move hits India with 26% tariffs. Is this a setback, or can India negotiate a better deal? We will try to decode it. In our fourth story, we shift gears to Greece's 27 billion defense splurge. What's driving this massive spending and why does it matter? We will decode. And finally, a shocking story is Meta's AI secretly training on your favorite books. Authors are protesting, and you need to hear why. Buckle up, dear viewers. It's time to dive into today's episode. Well, Donald Trump has done what many feared. He has announced sweeping tariffs on imports into the United States, sparking fears of economic turmoil. On April 2, a day he called Liberation Day, Trump declared a national emergency and imposed a universal 10% tariff on all the imports coming into US. For 60 countries that he accused of cheating America, even higher levies were introduced, calling this a declaration of economic independence. Quote unquote, Trump believes his move will reduce dependence on foreign goods and make, I have to quote here, make America wealthy again. After being great, you want to become wealthy. However, many economists and world leaders warn that this could have disastrous consequences, pushing the US and potentially the world, the whole world, towards recession. So let's start by understanding its implication for US and then we'll dive into the global implications. Trump's tariffs target over 3.3 trillion worth of imported goods annually, meaning US businesses and customers, yes, you will bear the burden of higher prices. If the new tariffs result in an average 29% duty, US importers could face some 1 trillion in annual tariffs, translating to an extra of $7,300 per household. Everyday essentials like cars, clothing, coffee, and wine are expected to become slightly more expensive. Don't worry, only slightly. Fish produced from Mexico could see price hikes almost immediately. The Federal Reserve's preferred inflation measure, currently at 2.8%, could jump to 4.8%, worsening the cost of living crisis. With higher costs, customers are already cutting back on discretionary expenses, discretionary spending, and businesses may be forced to lay off workers to offset the rising expenses. Now, economists warn that these tariffs, and I quote, will raise the probability of a US recession. Goldman Sachs has already increased the likelihood of a US recession to 35%, while Moody's analysts predicts that the odds of any trade war in the future rises and rises. Now let's broaden the scope and understand the global implication, global impact. The tariffs aren't just a US problem. Donald Trump has made them a global problem, and that could cripple the global trade. Markets reacted instantly with stock prices trembling worldwide. China, one of the hardest hit countries, has condemned the tariffs and threatened countermeasures. The European Union EU is also bracing for impact. In 2024, the EU exported some 382 euros billion worth of goods to the US. While Trump's 20% reciprocal tariffs, exports could decline by 85 billion euros, hinting at key industries such as automotive, pharmaceutical industries. Germany, Denmark, and Central Europe are expected to suffer the most, and Goldman Sachs predicts that the Eurozone may enter a recession in 2025 this year. The UK, facing a baseline 10% tariff, is similarly at risk. The country exported some £60 billion worth of goods to the US last year, primarily in automobiles and machinery. The Institute for Public Policy Research estimates that over 25,000 jobs in the UK's car industry could be at risk due to declining exports to US. Even Canada and Mexico, despite being excluded from the new tariffs, won't escape the unscattered. Existing tariffs on autos and other goods remain in place, and higher prices could worsen the cost of living crisis in Canada. Mexico could also see job losses and economic slowdown, economic shutdown. The point is that Trump's tariffs could dismantle the global free trade that the US helped establish post World War II. The US's average tariff rate has splurged from 2.5% in 2024 to 22%, a level not seen since 1910. Flinch rating says many countries will likely end up in recession, quote unquote. While Trump's goal is to boost America's prosperity, the risk of his plan backfiring is quite high. If the world plunges into a trade war, the economic damage could be severe. World leaders have strongly criticized President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, calling them a major blow to the global economy. Let's start with EU. European Commission Chief, the President of EU, has condemned the move, warning that the new impunity and have dire consequences for millions and millions around the world. China, one of the hardest hit countries, has also voiced its opposition, threatening countermeasures in response to Donald Trump's decision to impose a universal 10% on all the imports and steeper levies on 60 nations deemed, and I quote here, worse offenders. Trump defended his move as a necessary step to boost American manufacturing, and let me quote it again, it's my favorite, make America wealthy again. EU President said that the impact on vulnerable economies would be severe, dire impact. She declared that Europe would stand united against these tariffs, with the European Union now facing a 20% levy, preparing countermeasures if negotiations with the United States fail, which I believe is very likely. She said, and I quote here again, if you take on one of us, you take on all of us. Then comes Italy. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, despite her close ties with Donald Trump, labeled the decision, and let me quote here, wrong, and expressed hope for a deal to prevent a full-blown trade war. Spanish Prime Minister reaffirmed Spain's commitment to open global trade, while Ireland's Prime Minister called Trump's decision deeply regrettable. This is what he said. Then comes France in the picture. France is also preparing for retaliation, with President Emmanuel Macron set to meet industry leaders impacted by Trump tariffs, and a government spokesperson stating that France is, and I quote, ready for this trade war. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk, I have intentionally taken his name, highlighted the heavy economic toll on his country, estimating losses exceeding some 2.6 billion US dollars. Meanwhile, China, branded as one of the worst offenders by Donald Trump, faces a staggering 54% tariffs on its goods. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce has demanded that the US immediately revoke these measures, warning of decisive counteractions, like he's going to do that. Other Asian nations have also reacted. Taiwan described the tariffs, and I quote, highly unreasonable. While South Korea's acting president, Han Duck-soo, who has, I believe, very limited time in the office, acknowledged that the global trade war has become a reality. Then comes Japan and Thailand, both hit with steep duties and now seeking negotiations to mitigate the impact. Israel, which had removed all the tariffs on US imports in anticipation of better trade relations, expressed shock as being hit with 17% duty. I don't know why they have done that. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese warned that Americans could bear the ultimate cost of these unjustified tariffs and stated that Australia would not engage in retaliation measures. In contrast, UK, the United Kingdom, is considering countermeasures, with Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds drafting a list of US products that could face new British tariffs. Then comes Latin America, which is also gearing up for a response. Brazil swiftly passed an economic reciprocity law to counter 10% US tariffs, and its foreign ministry is weighing further action. They were very fast. including possible appeals to the World Trade Organizations. Do you think Trump cares? Anyhow, Canada, despite being exempt from the blanket tariffs, is bracing for repercussions, particularly in its auto industry. The newly appointed Prime Minister Mark Carney, who has, I think, a lot on his plate these days with elections coming, he said, and I quote, fight these tariffs with countermeasures, emphasizing that they would fundamentally alter global trade dynamics. And I agree with him on a serious note. Notably, Trump's friends, Russia and North Korea, were absent from these tariffs lists, with the US maintaining existing trade restrictions on them under separate executive orders. Don't worry, they have some restrictions. However, the overwhelming global response signals that Trump's tariff war is far over and the economic consequences could be very, very severe. Let's talk about India now. Donald Trump has imposed a 26% reciprocal tariffs on India, calling it a discounted rate compared to other Asian nations. While these tariffs are lower than those on China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand, they still pose significant challenges for Indian exports. The big question that we're raising on the show tonight is that how will this impact India's economy, and can Prime Minister Modi negotiate a better deal? Let's talk about it now. Trump's announcement of sweeping trade tariffs has shaken the global markets. His new trade policy imposes a universal 10% tariff on all the imports coming into the United States starting April 5, followed a country specific tariffs based on trade deficits effective from April 9. India finds itself among the countries affected with a 26% levy imposed on exports. The 26% tariff on Indian exports is lower than the 34% on China, 36% on Thailand, and 32% on Indonesia. However, India still faces higher levels than Japan, which is 24%, South Korea, which is 25%. While this discounted tariff might seem like a relief, it still put pressure on Indian industries that rely on exports to the United States. First, let me tell you about the possible immediate impact on the Indian businesses, then we'll dive into other dimensions. The Federation of Indian Export Organization, FIEO, has expressed concerns over the tariffs, stating that they will impact key industries such as electronics, jewelry and gems, pharmaceutical industries, refined petroleum, auto parts, and machinery. FIEO Director General Ajay Sahai believes that while India is better positioned like competitors of Vietnam and China, the tariffs will still squeeze profit margins for the exporters. Then comes banking and trade. Banking and trade experts argue that these tariffs are based on exaggerated calculations, including custom duties, alleged currency manipulation, and GST, goods and services tax. This shift in US trade policy from America first to America alone could disrupt global supply chain, and Indian businesses are bracing for potential shocks. Ajay Bagga, a banking and international markets expert, highlighted that while India's domestic industries may not feel the immediate heat, export-driven sectors, for example textiles, engineering goods, and electronics, will be hard hit. The impact is already visible in the market reactions, with the metals and oil seeing a sell off, while pharma companies remain in a wait and watch mode. So, the big question is, can India, or let me say Prime Minister Modi, negotiate a better deal as Donald Trump says he is a friend? Well, there may be a silver lining. Trump has signaled that he is open to negotiations, and India is already in talks with the US for a bilateral trade agreement called as BTA. A day before the tariffs were announced, India reportedly agreed to the terms of reference for the deal, which aims to bring down duties on both the sides. The trade deal is a part of Mission 500, which seeks a double bilateral trade in goods and services to some 500 billion US dollars by year 2030. The Indian government is actively pushing for an early resolution, with negotiations expected to conclude by the fall. And if successful, this could help India mitigate some of the tariff related losses and secure a better trading position with the United States of America. So, the limited point that I'm trying to make here is that While India's tariff rates is lower than any other nation in the South Asia, in our region, the impact on exports cannot be ignored. Businesses in sectors like electronics, gems, pharma will have to absorb the higher costs, at least in the short term, unless we are not able to negotiate. The Indian government is pushing for a trade deal that could ease these burdens, but until then, exporters will have to adapt to the new tariff reality. Whether this situation turns into a long term setback or a strategic advantage will depend on how swiftly India negotiates a relief deal with Washington. Greece is making a bold move in its defense strategy, announcing a historic $27 billion investment to modernize its armed forces over the next 12 years. This is a major shift considering the country has just emerged from a decade long financial crisis. But why now? What does this mean for Greece and its geopolitical position, especially with its long standing rivalry with Turkey? Let's explore. Greek Prime Minister made the announcement in Parliament emphasizing that the world is changing at an unprecedented pace. The new defense plan is designed to enhance Greece's military capabilities while integrating cutting edge technology. So, what are the key focus areas? Number one is cyber capabilities, then comes unmanned vehicles, then loitering munitions drones, and a sophisticated anti missile and anti drone system called as Achilles Shield. This massive investment is not just about military strength, it's also about self sufficiency. A major highlight of the plan is to involve the defense industry of Greek in the whole system effectively. The move is expected to boost domestic production and create jobs while reducing dependency on the foreign suppliers. Now let's talk about the geopolitical angle. You see, Greece and Turkey have a long history of tensions, from disputes over the Aegean Sea to military posturing in the Mediterranean. Turkey has been rapidly modernizing its military, and Greece clearly does not want to be left behind. However, Greece's defense spending is already one of the highest in Europe, accounting for over 3% of its GDP, more than double the EU average. With NATO alliances, including the US, urging European nations to increase military expenditure, Greece is positioning itself as a leader in the regional security. The announcement also sparked some internal debate. While the government recently approved the first pay raise for armed forces personnel in 14 years, there is a growing pressure from within the ruling party, which is the Democratic Party, to extend these benefits to other unarmed personnel as well. PM has promised further salary hikes but warned against relentless spending as Greece still needs to maintain financial stability. Interestingly, the European Commission is stepping in to help by invoking the EU's national escape clause. Military expenditures will be exempt from budgetary limits, allowing Greece more financial flexibility without breaking fiscal rules. But PM has been cautious, stating that this flexibility must be used wisely to avoid any economic pressures. So, what's next? Greece has expressed support for broader EU defense cooperation through its joint coalition of southern European nations, pushing for military spending through giants instead of loans, through grants instead of loans. While the idea of European anti missile shield is on the table, PM believes that a future discussion will be fine. Right now, the priority is to strengthen Greece's military in a way that ensures both stability of economy and security. With these sweeping challenges, Greece is sending a strong message. It also prepared to defend its sovereignty and keep peace with global security development. Whether this move will deter threats or escalate regional tensions, this is something that we will see in the times to come. Imagine this. You spent years perfecting your craft, pouring your heart and soul into writing a book. You finally get it published, and it's a dream come true. But then you discover that your work has been used without your permission. For what? To train artificial intelligence. This is exactly what happened to Jack Strange. I'm telling you this story from the BBC. He said that I quote, "It was incredible. I had so many rejections along the way," he recalls, "about landing a publishing deal." He adds, "So when somebody said yes, I cried because it's everything I have ever wanted." But his joy quickly turned into frustration when he discovered that some of his self-published books had been uploaded to LibGen, a shadow library containing millions of books and academic papers taken without permission. This is the important part, taken without permission. A report by The Atlantic revealed that Meta has accessed millions of these pirated books and research papers through LibGen, a library genesis to train its generative AI system Llama. Now, author groups worldwide are calling for government intervention. You see, Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, is currently facing a lawsuit from multiple authors over the use of their work to train the artificial intelligence, their model, the Meta's model. The controversy centers around Llama. What is it? A large language model, LLM, similar to OpenAI's ChatGPT and Google's Gemini. LLMs processes vast amount of data, identifying patterns to generate text. While these systems are praised for their capabilities, critics argue they don't think. They don't think or understand the content they produce. Worse, they can confidentially present misinformation as facts. So all ChatGPT lovers note it. Tech companies claim they need vast amounts of data to improve AI, but authors, artists, and other creatives insist they should be paid for their work. A Meta spokesperson told BBC Newsbeat, and I have to quote you here, "We have developed transformational Gen AI powering incredible innovation, productivity, and creativity. Fair use of copyrighted materials is vital to this, and we want to develop AI that benefits everybody." Unquote. However, writers like Jack see it differently. Jack found that some of his books had been taken, but he wasn't shocked. He said, and I quote, "I have seen so many fellow authors affected, but we cannot just accept it. We need to fight back." He added, Meta argues that open source AI like Llama will, and I quote, "increase human productivity, creativity, and quality of life." But Jack believes it threatens creativity and creators like him. He says it's frustrating that AI targets creative jobs first, the ones that bring joy to people. We are already undervalued and AI makes it worse. Now, writers are organizing protests. One demonstration is planned near Meta's London office, and online activism is gaining traction, and that is why we have decided to do this story today. The Author Association is also raising concerns about AI's impact in the years to come. The president said, "We feel helpless, but we are fighting back." The president said the work has been used to train AI, which affects the publishing opportunities to come in the future. He said, and I quote, "Large language models mimic voices, styles, and expressions. Someone can ask AI to write a book in my style, and it will do without credit or compensation." She believes that AI companies should pay for using copyrighted content. She said, and I quote, "Meta is making money off our work. Instead of licensing it, they have taken it for free." With legal battles heating up and authors taking a stand, the fight over AI and intellectual property is only just beginning, and we will keep a close eye. And that's all I have for you on the show tonight, dear viewers. I will see you tomorrow. Take care and good night.